暴いてやる。何やってんだよ。つい。
Did you know that I specialize in reading minds? That's right, I can tell exactly what you're thinking right now. Isn't this the guy who spent 8 months on an hour-long video about Persona 4 the animation? And now he's talking about Persona 5 again? Isn't he tired of this series yet? Nope. Die. We're off to a great start. So Persona 5 Royal came out in the West a few months ago, back again to take everyone's money and maybe their hearts. I don't know, I thought you had to be like a bad person to get targeted, but that hasn't stopped anyone who's ever reviewed P5. I was as anxious as I was excited for this game. On one hand, these guys have been making tons of fantastic remakes for their older games for years now, but on the other hand, Royal was going to have to share a platform with the original game, limiting both the potential additions and changes to the overall experience by a considerable amount. And this was also the first Persona project in over a decade that longtime series director Katsura Hoshino had nothing to do with. So needless to say, these guys had a lot to prove. Today's spotlight will be shining on all the changes and additions that were made to the game because I've already talked about base Persona 5. Plus, the only thing I'm interested in right now is figuring out whether this old ship with a new captain is just as efficient at making amazing games as it was before. With that said, when it comes to changes to existing content, it's easy to tell the goal was quality of life over all else. The first thing I noticed was the fabulous facelift given to the game's visuals. There are tons of little changes and tweaks that overall make this game far more pleasing to the eyes than the original. For example, textures look sharper and colors look crisper. Persona's never been a series on the cutting edge of graphical fidelity. Hell, I'm pretty sure if the aesthetics weren't so good at hiding it, there would be public outcry over why half the textures in this game are who they are. But being unshackled from the PlayStation 3 and its now 14-year-old hardware gave the team some much needed breathing room, so they used it to make the game look like it actually belongs in 2020. This overhaul isn't exclusive to the visuals either. Tons of cutscenes and daily events have been gently brushed over with many much appreciated new details. Ryuji coming back after forgetting to change uniforms, crossword puzzles to complete at night, tons of characters are foreshadowed in new scenes, some can be seen roaming around the world months before you're supposed to care about them, and I have to give a massive thank you to the genius who came up with the photo art you get after the major slice of life sections, which have also been expanded with tons of great new scenes.
Since you're here for the festival, does that mean you and your friends there are meat lovers?
I'd say that we're really lovers of fruit.
Existing palaces got touch-ups in the forms of new rooms and new boss mechanics, both of which I believe made them better overall. What I'm more iffy about though are the changes to Mementos. Mementos was pretty grindy and boring in the original, so to spice things up, we now have 172 new reasons to start planning that funeral for our free time. I'm sure Atlus expected a wedding instead. I mean, they gave us the flower boy and everything. But hunting these stupid-ass stamps down has only tripled the amount of pointless grinding I had to do in there. I played this game wanting to complete as much as I could in a single playthrough, so every Mementos trip to a new area meant staying in there for however long it took to get every new stamp so no time went wasted. The stamps were designed with exploration in mind, which is a great idea on paper. You get several freebies from just traversing the area, but the rest need to be found by smashing hidden walls or just checking the right rooms. The problem is these stamps aren't located on set floors, and there isn't even a guarantee that the floor you're exploring will have a stamp. So when you inevitably come up short after reaching the end of a block, it's time to go up one floor, search it, go down one floor, search it, go back up, rinse, repeat. Oh, excuse me, I think there's something wrong with my food. Terribly sorry, sir. Would you mind sharing the details so we can resolve this issue for you? Yeah, you forgot the fun? Look, I understand the floors are randomly generated, so putting stamps in fixed locations wouldn't make any sense, but the least they could do is assign stamps to specific floors and make them permanently appear on said floors. That way you can collect every stamp on your way to the next block without having to stop for 2 hours because there were 20 stamps back there that didn't even have a chance at existing until you started backtracking. Anything to make the experience more consistent and less grindy would have been so much better than what we were given. The flower system is a neat concept, I don't have any problems with that, and I still have a lot of fun hunting down targets and listening to the Phantom Thieves banter as they drive, but because of how awful stamp collecting is, I'm inclined to say Mementos is worse off than it was in the original. It doesn't matter if there's new visuals, new music, new activities, or even a new character if the majority of the time you spend there is a monotonous chore. I do really love the new music though. But at least there's some solitude to be found back home when you learn that Dictator Cat in your backpack is a lot more lenient than you remember. One of my favorite changes to the game was the fact that a real effort was made to give you more free time. Story events or metaverse trips that would have ended your day right then and there will at least give you time to do stuff around LeBlanc, and at most let you go outside at night. No longer are multiple days deleted from your calendar because it takes 2 weeks to figure out who the fuck Junya Kaneshiro is. I think it helps out the pacing of story-heavy sections a ton. Now instead of being expected to sit through however many days the game needs to tell its story with no breaks, you can hang out with Morgana and raise some social stats before taking on the next day. It goes a long way for making each day feel complete, and it overall makes Royal appear as a more definitive package when compared to the original. But it wouldn't be worthy of that title if there wasn't any new content added to the game, and I'm pleased to say that there's a lot. You've got, apologies in advance, Kichijoji, which has a ton of new places to explore. My favorites being the shrine and the penguin sniper place where you can play darts and pool. As someone who's owned a dartboard for years now, it feels nice to say I finally understand the rules. The jazz club is a fun place. Expanding the move pools of everyone's personas by a little bit is never a bad idea. But what if you wanted a little more out of a new playable area? A place unique to you and you alone. The Thieves' Den is a phenomenal implementation of an idea way more large-scale games need to utilize. It's essentially a museum where you can purchase all kinds of things from the game and customize their placement to your liking. Main and supporting characters will show up and comment on whatever objects you've put down, and pretty soon you'll have your very own palace, complete with its own music, theme, and decorations. I love this place, and not just because there's so much to see and do. Persona 5 is a game that thrives on memorable moments with its spectacular cast of characters. If you've built a connection with the game like so many others have, imagine having your own place to reminisce on the adventures you've had. While recording for this video, I experimented with the den by swapping to random themes, music, and placing random decorations everywhere just to see how it would feel. I'd say the experience was a lot like walking through memories, and as someone who likes this game maybe a little too much, this was pretty amazing. Hey man, you wanna play Tycoon? Hell yeah, I do! This is just a really fun card game. That's it. I'm surprised I had never heard of it until Royal. It's a very old and well-known game in both Japan and the United States, although rules differ slightly between regions, and over here we call the game Asshole. Alright, got some good momentum going, and... oh, wait, actually, I'm supposed to be talking about you, aren't I? So Royal added 2 new characters, Kasumi Yoshizawa and Takuto Maruki, as well as reworked all of Akechi's confidant. I won't deep dive into Kasumi and Maruki yet because most of their development comes in the 3rd semester, which is especially true for Kasumi. She's a gymnastics student who arrived at school on a scholarship the same day the player does. You see her a lot throughout the vanilla story, but she never becomes a part of the group even when she gets her persona because she doesn't like the Phantom Thieves. She believes problems are meant to be solved by individuals, and relying on others too much will only cause dependency. Therefore, a group of thieves hell-bent on cleaning up the scum of Japan isn't very appealing to her. And those last few sentences are everything of note you'll know about her for 70 hours. I wish there was a better way of implementing her into the vanilla story without her just being a tease that new content was coming, but considering what they did with her, I have no idea how they could have pulled it off. So just like the game, I'm going to set her in the corner and only talk about her again once she does more than talk about gymnastics and tell me she's sorry.
Sorry to bring you here. Sorry to be a bother. Sorry for keeping you. Sorry. I'm sorry for the trouble. I apologize. I'm so sorry. Sorry. I'm also so sorry. I apologize. Sorry.
Son of a bitch!
Dr. Maruki is different though, because he's just a cool dude straight out the gate. He's a cognitive science researcher who was hired to be the student counselor at Shujin as they needed a way to save face after Kamoshida destroyed their reputation. He provides therapy sessions for all the Phantom Thieves periodically throughout the story, which are my favorite pre-3rd semester moments with him. Whoever was in charge of this man's dialogue deserves a medal, because he nails the vibe of an inexperienced counselor who truly cares about his patients despite the fact that this isn't his chosen profession. I'm super into psychology and its applications, so hearing the way Maruki talks to his patients makes him a very interesting and likable character for me. He lets them control the flow of the conversation and patiently listens without ever trying to steer the topic of discussion towards himself. And when he's talking to the player, he'll just teach him about psychological concepts in his own charismatic way. Not gonna lie, I kind of want his job. I like how similar it is to how the player operates with their confidant system, mastering the art of connecting with others so they can learn about their problems and help them overcome them. Which brings us to Goro Akechi, who no longer ranks up as the story progresses. Instead, he's got a fully fledged confidant just like everyone else. I appreciate the effort made to increase his presence in Joker's life, seeing as how he's such an important character to the story. In fact, seems like he wants to hang out right now.
I may not seem like it, but I sometimes wish that Santa Claus actually existed. Although, if he did, I'd have to arrest him for breaking and entering.
Oh, I remember now. I freaking despise you. And spending more time with him and his confidant only reaffirmed that I never want anything to do with him. But personal taste aside, I understand that he's special to a lot of people, which I think is very telling for the strength of this cast of characters. I'm willing to bet most people like the majority of them, maybe dislike a few, but you can always find one or two who resonate with you the most. It's exactly what I talked about in the K-On! Video. The cast is so diverse and well written that you'd have to struggle to not find someone to become attached to. I'm sure Akechi's decision to Alt F4 himself in the original game hit a ton of people really hard, but I believe the fact that I couldn't care less about the guy but still adore the game overall is a testament to just how solid of an experience the whole package is. Alright, that's enough about confidants. I've been talking all this time and I haven't even touched on the battle changes. There are a ton of minor tweaks and major additions that give Royal's battle system a unique feel compared to the original, but the unifying theme is this game is now much more accessible and much easier than vanilla. Technicals and baton passes have been overhauled and are now so much stronger and more prevalent than before. Ammo restocks after battles now, so go nuts with that. The new Showtime attacks can be a get out of jail free card as they typically activate when Joker is in mortal danger. Everyone gets third tier personas that up their strength even more. Futaba's even better than she was in the original. The accessories you get from the Will-See crystals are extremely strong. If you get ambushed, you start out guarding. Morgana giving you more free time means it's very easy to complete every confidant in one playthrough. Also, all the confidant perks are better than they were in the original, especially Ryuji's rank 7 perk. Getting to level 99 is a piece of cake thanks to the Reaper being a joke if you let him ambush you. Maxing up Persona's stats is a piece of cake because the new Velvet Room alarm allows you to infinitely raise a Persona's stats so long as you've got the time. Yeah, I think you get the idea. Plus, the only thing stopping you from steamrolling the entire game with Messiah Picaro is your ability to download a free DLC pack. Whether this is a good or bad change is ultimately up to you, but personally I would have preferred a more difficult game. I do find a lot of satisfaction in working hard to earn a really strong weapon or a really high level so I can make the game my bitch, but when I sit down and contrast how I finished with Royal to how I finished with base Persona 5, there's no contest. I finished vanilla around level 70 with personas below my level and decent equipment. While climbing up the Mementos Tower and striking down the Archangels to get to the final boss, I had a real fear that I wouldn't make it. A feeling that I might lose and let everyone I've met on this 100-hour journey down. Yaldabaoth's presence was imposing. Every new trick he pulled in his fight felt like the beginning of the end if I didn't do something about it.
This one has a book.
It's a book!
Don't let your guard down.
He's going to read!
And because of this, overcoming this obstacle felt so satisfying. It wasn't real, but video games can make things feel real by presenting a good challenge to the player. In Royal, however...
The great journey is nigh, and nothing, not even the flood, can stop it. Boo.
Nothing stood a chance. Nothing was a threat! This game gave me so many opportunities to become busted, and because I wanted to do as much as I could in one run, I took them all. Yeah, this means there aren't nearly as many frustrating moments as, say, Persona 3, but think about it this way. Nobody ever goes out of their way to talk about that big yellow mini-boss thing in Madarame's palace, but everybody remembers the sleeping table. By lowering the difficulty this much, you're removing the impact memorable encounters have because they pose no threat to the player. At that point, all you have to shoulder the fight's reputation is the story behind it, and games are better than that. This all might sound naive, because somebody coming into Royal for the first time isn't gonna know how to graciously accept every handout the game gives them, so I'll meet you guys in the middle. Is this game still fun? Absolutely. It has one of the finest gameplay loops of any RPG I've ever played. Optimizing your strategies to destroy enemies on the first turn is still the name of the game. I just wish it was more difficult to pull stuff like this off, but hey, that's what hard mode's for. Well, it's looking to be about that time. But before we jump into the new semester content, there's something I need to admit about base Persona 5. It's been over a year since I first played Persona 5, and since then I've been going back and playing all the other games in the series. As of now, I played through Golden twice, and I'm a decent chunk of the way through 3. Progress is slow because I'm playing through with a friend. The point is, I feel like the more I go backwards, the more disappointed I become with 5's story, specifically its final hours, because I think it lacks a lot of its own identity. Persona 5 has a lot going for it in terms of individuality. The themes, settings, and aesthetics are all unique to this game. For most of the experience, save for a few exceptions, Persona 5 stands on its own 2 feet, despite having to fit into the awkward middle ground between 4's cheerful nature and 3's square-up-to-your stepdad attitude. But for me, this all falls off at the end. At the risk of dropping some out-of-context spoilers for Persona 4, I'd like to explain some of the similarities between the two. So we've got an evil god who pit two polar opposite people against each other. One of them is a trickster backed by Igor, and the other is a serial killer who pretended to be friends with the protagonist and his team. Once the protagonist comes out on top, the evil god intends to carry out their plans regardless, which is exerting unwanted control over the world due to being summoned by the imperfections of man. The protagonist summons an ultimate form of their persona and stops the god. They get to hang out with someone on Valentine's Day, and the game ends with them going back home after a heartfelt goodbye to everyone they got to know during the last year. All of this is incriminating enough, but everything came apart for me when I heard Igor say this again.
Now go forth to the people whom you should be facing the truth with.
Now, I understand that this is a reused line from Persona 4 out of respect for Igor's Japanese voice actor who passed away during development, but everything that made Persona 5 a special game dissolved into a messy retread that doesn't seem interested in exploring new ways to express the game's unique themes in this scene. And don't mistake story beats for themes. While these two scenarios play out very similarly, the messages are vastly different. It really frustrates me because Persona 5's ideas of rebellion and your perceptions shaping reality are such cool concepts. Yet when they come to a head in the climax, all I can think is Persona 4 but worse. And that sucks, man. So why bring this up at all? Well, it's because this problem is completely absent in the third semester, and it's a big reason why this is my favorite piece of content from Royal. It starts to pick up right as the original climax is winding down. Sai asks you to turn yourself in to save your teammates. Then Akechi comes back from the dead and says, "Nah, I'll take the fall for you." Well, that was weird. Then it's New Year's and you go to the shrine with Kasumi, so good on you, guy, but nobody's making any sense. Ryuji's back on the track team with his messed up leg. An has plans with Shiho even though she's still in rehab. And apparently Haru is very excited to be having dinner with her father's corpse. Everyone parts ways with you, so all you can do is go home and sleep, only to wake up with another man in your bed. And hold on, we're not done yet. So, you go downstairs and find Wakaba, who I guess no longer thinks she might die because here she is. Then Akechi bursts through the door and pulls you aside to ask, how could you choose him over me? Alright, stop. Basically, you're living in Bizarro World now, and Akechi wants to team up with you in order to get back to reality. And I have to admit, as much as I didn't want Akechi to come back, in retrospect, I'm so glad he did because this man is hilarious. They got rid of his stupid detective self-important personality completely in favor of the ruthless, psychotic one seen in his boss fight. So now instead of wanting to throw him in front of a train whenever he opens his mouth, he's a joy to listen to. You can just tell he's having so much fun playing the villain role that you can't help but embrace his off-the-wall insanity.
That's it, Joker. It's time to kill. This enemy is a sad little weakling. Let's put it out of its misery.
Just trash after all.
Okay. I'm a bit occupied, so do your goddamn job!
The intense sexual tension between these two is broken by Kasumi, who explains the palace where she first awakened to her powers is still there. So the three begin to infiltrate to find some answers, only to be stopped by shadows who behave very differently from those of other palace rulers. Most shadows attack the Phantom Thieves in order to protect their ruler's desires, but these ones only seem interested in stopping the thieves from seeing what lies ahead for their own sake. And the palace ruler himself seems like a pretty cooperative and down down-to-earth guy, despite how much defiance he's getting from Kasumi and Akechi right off the bat. And surprise surprise, the palace ruler is Dr. Maruki. I'm sure it's only a twist if you didn't catch the fact that this is the only new character who would make sense as the new villain. Persona games tend to telegraph major plot points dozens of hours before they happen, sometimes so blatantly that you might feel really stupid in hindsight if you run back through and listen to what characters were actually trying to tell you. And in my case, I figured out this game's biggest reveal an hour after starting it for the first time.
In fact, there was a real sad one just last month. It happened before you came here. If I remember right, the girl that passed away was only 15.
Nope, new girl is her sister and they switched identities somehow because one of them died in a car crash. And you thought you could just sneak new dialogue in where there wasn't any before past me? Come on, you're talking to a self-proclaimed Persona database here. Yeah, so it turns out this Kasumi is actually her younger sister Sumire, and the real Kasumi died about a month before the player arrived in Tokyo. Here we see a more reserved-looking Sumire, who runs away from Kasumi because she's upset with her, only to be saved from oncoming traffic by her sister who wasn't so lucky. And sorry, I need to interject for a minute because apparently trucks running over anime characters is such a common trope that the community is convinced all of them were done by the same guy and his vehicle has been dubbed Truck-kun. Some have even attempted compiling lists of all his victims and it's, much larger than I expected. Oh no. Okay, back to the video. Sumire fell into a deep despair due to the survivor's guilt, which was only amplified by her intense inferiority complex towards Kasumi. Nothing good ever comes from comparing yourselves to others, especially when it comes to family. But imagine for a second having to wake up in Little Miss Perfect's shadow for years, being subjected to all her positive traits which the entire world finds endearing with the exception of yourself. All you can think about is how unfair it is that you can't do the same thing she does, which does nothing but degrade your sense of self. You live day by day feeling insignificant. Everybody else seems to have their shit together and all you ever see are their accolades and achievements, but never how their hard work and understanding of their individual strengths led to their success. And once you're at the peak of this downward spiral, you have to watch this seemingly perfect person die, while you walk away from it believing it was all your fault. Dr. Maruki took over from there. After heeding Sumire's wish to become her sister, he employed some special power to make her truly believe she was Kasumi. She started high school at Shujin the same day the player transferred in, all while her insistence to act exactly like Kasumi silently troubled the people around her. Her gymnastics performance dropped dramatically due to her feeble attempts at mimicking her sister's style, and only through her encounters with the Phantom Thieves does she come to break away from the facade, which takes quite a while. There's even a mini-boss fight with her after she refuses to accept your decision to push back against Maruki. So at the end of the day, fake Kasumi's firm belief that people need to solve their problems by themselves and the Phantom Thieves are unwanted because of this is ironically one of the most hypocritical statements ever claimed. And once she's done running away, the rest of her story is spent picking up the pieces and moving on as Sumire. Her struggle to find her own voice in spite of years of beating herself up over her sister's seemingly perfect nature is one of the most compelling and relatable stories this franchise has ever told. After the third semester, she shot up from my least favorite character to one of, if not my favorite, instantly. Especially since she grew a real personality when she became herself again. And if you genuinely liked her more when she was still pretending to be your sister, I don't know what to tell you. Kasumi. Now that Appetite has officially joined the team, we can turn our attention to Doc. He's the one responsible for altering reality into one where everybody is happy, thanks to a persona he gained when he tried to pull his girlfriend out of a deep depression. It worked, and her memories were altered to remove any trace of her parents being murdered. However, this also removed Maruki from her mind. He distanced himself from her, believing it to be for the best, and went back to his research to find a way to alter cognition in order to end all suffering, so nobody ever has to go through what she did. This is where the player comes in, as unbeknownst to them, their familiarity with the metaverse proved to be invaluable for Maruki's research. And this was the result. A world bathed in nothing but smiles and congratulations congratulations, contrasted only by the bleak snowfall and scored with an unsettlingly comforting track. The third semester is where the new music for Royal really shines. It nails the tone of a false reality that's just too good to be true, and it stays with you the entire time you're stuck there. You have to watch your friends live through this facade that they wished for, and all you can do is believe that they'll come to their senses soon, which they eventually do, and they take cues from Persona's Golden Child to give us third-tier Personas. It's awesome. Plus, watching them awaken gives you something to do during the third semester if you've maxed everything and everyone by that point. Doc's Palace itself nails the atmosphere just as much as the world he created does. Gentle Madman is the self-contradictory name of a song that never really starts, always opting to loop back to the same 8 notes. It stands in contrast to the more straightforward palace themes before it, all of them depicting the sins of the palace's ruler through music. This one is more hesitant, as if it's a place you don't want to be in. After a little exploring and a really fun section where you have to answer questions based on how Doc would answer them, the music along with the tone shifts. You find his little Garden of Eden and realize his pain and his desires have built up into a savior complex too grand to not be a serious threat. Gentle Madman has been replaced by Out of Kindness, a double entendre that represents both the reason Dr. Maruki created this world and the attitude of the Phantom Thieves towards his actions. So after a short trek up to the top of his palace, it's time to send the calling card and smash his face in until the guy listens to reason. And from a gameplay perspective, I think they really dropped the ball here. Doc comes out wearing the stupidest thing I've ever seen and attacks with the persona he's been using throughout the palace. But once you take him out, instead of a proper third phase, you've basically won. All you need to do is take a knee and run out the clock. He summons this massive persona and gets ready to fight you on this broken highway in the middle of a burning city. The aesthetics are fantastic, but just sitting there and blocking until Futaba tells you to go into a cutscene and shoot him in the head is not. Waiter? Yeah, I'm sorry. I know I'm complaining a lot today, but, the fuck is this? You're going to go through the trouble of making this beautifully designed behemoth and you're not even gonna let me have a proper fight with him? It was really upsetting. I was ready for hell and I got Simon Says. The music is fantastic as always though. It's one of the only final boss themes I can recall where the lyrics plead for you to give up and submit. Plus the evolution of Life Will Change you hear on your way to fight Maruki is a direct response to his battle theme. You could say I believe it's one of my all-time favorites. So that's it. Maruki gets shot in the head and accepts defeat, then things revert back to how they were in the original Persona 5. Everyone who's deceased remains so, including Akechi, and the player is detained for testifying against Shido. Of course you come back, Valentine's Day happens, then White Day, which is new to Royal, and here we are again, about to go out and say goodbye to everybody before returning home. This time there are tons of fantastic little details scattered around the world for the player to find. I definitely recommend visiting the jazz club before you leave. And once you're done with that, you can make your way to the highly controversial new ending. After giving it some thought, I can confidently say that I think this ending is fantastic, because it isn't what I wanted in the slightest. Let me explain. Dr. Maruki's goal was to create a reality where nobody suffers, so no one has to go through the things Hirumi went through. And the end result was not only the reality that every main character wished for, but the one I wished for as well. I wouldn't blame you for not knowing, but I made a video about a year ago on base Persona 5, and in it I said this. And based on how the story had been progressing, I figured I wouldn't have to leave my new home for the one that tossed me aside a year ago. Surely after Valentine's Day I can have more days to hang out with my confidants and it'll end with Sojiro taking custody of me or something along those lines. But that didn't happen. With that in mind, what happens during the alternate ending where you accept Doc's reality as your own? Sojiro takes custody of you, and you live out the rest of your high school life with your new friends. They dangle this ideal vision of the future in your face, a world too happy to be real, as if to say, is this what you wanted? And it's so blissfully ignorant of how this universe should work that it's disgusting. Persona has stuck out in my mind as being special for several reasons. One of them is the theme of no matter how awful things get, it's important to get back up and move on. Its constant appearance in all 3 modern Persona games cements it in my mind as one of the series' core values. I don't think Doc was wrong when he said people deserve to escape their hardships and live happy lives, but in doing so you lose what makes people so special, their perseverance. Getting knocked down then getting back up stronger than before is a part of what makes life so fulfilling, and while Persona may understand that, Dr. Maruki does not, which is why the Phantom Thieves, a group of individuals who by all accounts should have had their lives ruined by forces out of their control, who deserve to live in this ideal reality more than anyone else, end up rejecting his proposal. Everyone on the team grows tremendously as an individual for their commitment to this decision, and the new ending reflects that. Ryuji's moving away so he can go to a rehab center and get his leg fixed. An is going to study abroad to advance her career. Makoto and Haru are looking for their own places to live. Futaba is actually going to school. Yusuke is going to work on a new special painting. And Sumire is off at training camp to pursue her gymnastics dream. Base Persona 5's message was about how they banded together as a group to take back their futures, while Royals is about how they grew to seize the futures they won for themselves. It's an extension to the base game that gave me so much more than the original ending. I really enjoyed revisiting Persona 5 for a lot of reasons, but by far the biggest one was I got to take in something most pieces of media can never deliver, a genuine message. Sure, they're fun JRPGs with interesting mechanics, but they wouldn't rank among my all-time favorites just for being good games. It's because of the stories they tell that I can connect with the franchise more so than anything else. Despite being a remake, Royal stands out from the base game by doing just that. It's a game I can be proud of because I know it's proud of itself, and it all ends with my favorite credits song from any of the games. While With the Stars and Us is about a group of legendary heroes who cast aside the chains of society and lived for themselves, Arlight tells a more personal, intimate story about a man who gave up everything he ever wanted because he knew it was the right thing to do. The lyrics speak to every single important character in the game. Joker to Akechi, who needs to live on knowing he'll never get a second chance at their friendship. Sumire to her sister, who needs to live on knowing she's never going to come back. The confidants to Joker, who need to live on without him because they can't rely on him forever. Futaba and Sojiro to Wakaba, and Haru to her father, who need to live on because they too are never coming back. And the Phantom Thieves to each other, who all have their own individual goals to pursue. They need to seize the future they fought for. The future they won for themselves, even though they of all people deserve to take the easy way out. Because they need to live on, even if it means they're never going to meet again. And only when the music drops does this franchise, which holds so many meaningful lessons, deliver one of its most powerful messages to date.
僕らが二度